Hi class, it's Mrs. Perone. We're here on page 49 of your shiny math book. We're still talking about the divers, Alicia, Emma, and Nick from the previous page. As we answer the questions on this page, we're going to be referring back to the number line on page 48. So look at the number line representing Emma's dive. What do the two arrows represent? So go back to page 48, take a look at the number line here. Emma's dive, these two arrows here, what do they represent? If I go back and read the words, it says, Emma dives to a position twice as deep as Alicia. So each of these little arrows represents the depth of Alicia's dive. So the two arrows represent, we'll say, the first arrow is Alicia's dive. And the second arrow shows how much lower Emma's dive was compared to Alicia's. So if we look back at the picture, this first arrow goes from 0 to -9/4. That's basically Alicia's dive. Emma's dive is twice as deep, so we need another arrow of the same length, basically to double that distance, and we would land down here. So let's see, look at the model it from the previous page. That would be this down here, and we're talking about Emma's position. Why do you multiply Alicia's position by 2 to find Emma's position? And this is kind of a vocabulary question, because when you see the words twice as or twice, that means multiply by 2. So if something is twice as much as something else, you need to multiply it by 2. That's what the word twice indicates. So for number 4, we're going to look at the number line representing Nick's dive. Why are there 3 equal arrows ending at the position of Alicia's dive? How will you use the arrows to find Nick's position? So let's go back to the number line. It's asking us, why are there 3 equal arrows going from 0 down to -9/4 here, which by the way is Alicia's dive. So if I look back at the words, it says that Nick dives to a position 2/3 as deep as Alicia. So that means he doesn't dive quite as deep as she does. He dives 2/3 of her depth. So let's see. So Nick's position, or Nick's dive, Nick's position is 2/3 of Alicia's. So the distance is, we'll say, so Alicia's distance is divided by 3. And then we'll find Nick's distance by counting 2 of those thirds. So we'll say Nick's position will be 2 of those thirds. Number 5, look at the model it. Why do you multiply Alicia's position by 2/3 to find Nick's position? So on the previous page, the model it, Nick's position is Alicia's position times 2/3. So Alicia's position is -9/4 times 2/3. So we multiply Alicia's position by 2/3 because it says Nick's position is 2/3 of her position. So Nick's position is 2/3 of Alicia's. So if we want to know, and basically in math, this keyword of, if you want to find part of something, or just anytime, basically anytime you see the word of, that's going to be an indication that you will be multiplying. So 2/3 of something is the same as 2/3 times something. So now that we've kind of talked about this question a lot, we're actually going to crunch the numbers. So we're going to do what's called evaluating the products. So evaluate the products is a fancy way of saying crunch the numbers and find where these people, or how deep they dove. So we're going to do 2 times -9/4. Before I do anything, when I see this, I know that a positive times a negative is going to come out negative. And if you do that first, then you can just kind of ignore the negative sign here, because you know that the answer has to come out negative. So just do all your calculations as if the negative is not there, because we already took that into account by putting that as part of our answer. So when I multiply these two numbers, it's easier if you make them both look like fractions. So 2 is not written as a fraction, but it could be if you give it a denominator of 1. So now it looks like a fraction times a fraction, which is super easy to do. We just multiply straight across the top. 2 times 9 is 18. And straight across the bottom, 1 times 4 is 4. So we could reduce this by dividing the top and bottom by 2. So I know it's still going to be negative. 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So this would be Nick's final position. Or I'm sorry, no, this is Emma's. I'm sorry, Emma's was twice as deep as Alicia. So this is Emma's final position, -9/2, which is the same if you convert this to an improper fraction, that's, or as a mixed number, it would be -4.5. And if we want to pause here for a sec, we could double check on our calculator. Turn it on. 2 times, in parentheses, let's put negative. Make sure you use the negative button at the bottom and not the minus sign. So 2 times -9/4. Oh, we gotta get a little fancy with the parentheses here. 9/4, right arrow, close parentheses. We're good. So there we are at -4.5. There's a button, I don't want to get too complicated here, but there's a button here right above my finger that says A, B, C, then an arrow to DE. That's going to put your answer from a mixed number to an improper fraction. If you press that button and then press enter, it will convert that mixed number to an improper fraction, and there's our -9/2, which I have right here. Okay, let's try the next one, which is Nick's position. Remember, his position was 2/3 of Alicia's, or 2/3 times -9/4. So once again, I know that a positive times a negative is a negative, and I'm going to multiply straight across the top. 2 times 9 is 18, and straight across the bottom, 3 times 4 is 12. So this is a correct answer by itself. It's just not simplified. So I'm going to simplify this answer. Actually, I'm going to practice doing this on my calculator. So this is how you guys would simplify a fraction on your calculator. Type it in just like it looks. So we have negative, and then push the BC button, 18/12. Press enter. It will give you the answer as a mixed number. So -18/12 is the same as -1.5. If you wanted to know what that was as an improper fraction, you could use that button that's right above my finger here. It's got the ABC to DE and the little arrows. That means mixed number to improper fraction and back and forth. Press that and press enter. It will convert that to an improper fraction of -3/2. So, and by the way, if we were to divide the top and bottom of this one by 6, that's how we would land at -3/2. All right. And number 7, we're almost done with this problem. So explain how you can use the rules for multiplying positive and negative numbers to check that your answers to problem 6 have the correct sign. So I'm going to answer this question by using my little tic-tac-toe board. This is what I use to make sure that I always have the sign of my answer correct. When you are multiplying or dividing, doesn't matter if you're doing that with integers or with fractions or with decimals, you can use this little guide to predict the sign of your answer when you're multiplying or dividing two numbers. It tells you the sign of your answer, and this goes in any direction. You can go down, left, right, diagonal, doesn't matter. It tells you the sign of your answer. Okay, we have 2 try it problems here. We're going to try to fit these on this page, and we're almost done, guys, so hang in there. We're going to use what we just learned to solve these problems. We're going to show our work right here on the paper. Hopefully we've got enough room, we'll make it work. So the temperature at noon is 0 degrees Celsius. The temperature changes by -3/2 degrees Celsius every hour for 4 hours. Write an expression to represent this situation. What is the temperature at 4 p.m.? So we're going from noon to 4. That's a change of 4 hours. We change -3/2 degrees for 4 hours. So we need to multiply this by 4. So this is the expression that represents the situation. It's -3/2 degrees for 4 hours. And when we find the answer to this, that's going to be the new temperature at 4 p.m. because we started at 0 and then we have to do this little bit of multiplication, and then that will be our new temperature. So we need to multiply straight across the top and straight across the bottom. We can make the 4 look like a fraction by giving it a denominator of 1. That doesn't change its value because 4 divided by 1 is still 4, but now it looks like a fraction and I can multiply. Don't forget, since we are multiplying a negative by a positive, the outcome will be negative. And I can see that according to my tic-tac-toe. A negative times a positive is negative. So let's multiply straight across the top. 3 times 4 is 12, and 2 times 1 is 2. So -12 divided by 2. You could use your calculator to help you if you wanted to. -12 divided by 2 is -6. So -12/2 is equal to -6. That means the temperature at 4 p.m., this little bit here, the temperature at 4 p.m. is -6 or -6 degrees Celsius. If we're being super correct, since we're talking about degrees Celsius, our answer probably should have degrees Celsius in it. Okay, the mystery word for this video is potato. And if you missed the mystery word on page 48, I'll put it in the comments for page 4 for lesson for page 48. But the mystery word for the previous page, page 48, is turkey. I think I forgot to say that. Okay, let's finish this very last problem. So I'm multiplying a negative fraction by a negative fraction. Before I do anything, I know that a negative times a negative is a positive. So when I see a negative times a negative, and I know the answer is going to be positive, if you want to rewrite this just to cut out some of the clutter, just imagine that you're multiplying two positive numbers because the outcome is going to be positive. So I wrote these two over here. I just took away the negative signs because I know the outcome is going to be positive anyway because a negative times a negative is a positive. So follow our rules here. We multiply straight across the top. 5 times 3 is 15. 6 times 10 is 60. That is our answer, although it's not in simplified form. So let's use our calculator to help us write this in simplified form. So 15 divided by 60. It's going to give you the decimal form of that. If you would like, you can use that FD button It's right above my finger here at the bottom of your screen. Press that button and then press enter. It's going to convert 0.25 to a fraction for you. Some of you might already recognize 0.25 as 1/4. So 15/60ths is the same as 1/4, which is the same as 0.25. I'd probably leave my answer like that. Since the problem was presented to us in fraction form, we should leave our answer in fraction form. Thanks for watching, guys. I know this was a super long one. Thank you for hanging in there, and I'll see you in class.